I don't understand how that shit was from Wuhan, China. Now all of a sudden this shit is on motherfucking tour. And let me tell you something, I ain't gonna front. A bitch is scared. I'm a little scared, you know what I'm saying? Like, shit got me panicking. And a lot of you motherfuckers think it's a joke, like I was thinking, right? But that shit right there, just because you think you're immune to it, guess what? Your pocket ain't, bitch, because a lot of shit comes from motherfucking China, bitch. So if you wonder where your motherfucking weave or your fashion over motherfucking packages have arrived, guess what, bitch? Coronavirus! Coronavirus! I'm telling you, shit is real! Shit is getting real! Woo!
Here we go.
Yeah, like I was saying,
Tell us about the reaction. The
reaction to what?
Chinese cover-up reaction. Like you're saying, like now everybody's getting pissed that the Chinese are covering up.
I'm talking about information wars. But today or yesterday, whatever, Pompeo, the Secretary of State, said that there was a cover-up with how the virus was spreading early on, so that China could sort of save face. And I mean, like I said, I'm just reporting on the information wars. I don't know what's true or what's not true anymore. Shit's changing pretty much on an hourly basis nowadays. But I don't know if I believe that, because we all know that the virus is like hella virulent, whatever. Someone teach me that word. So it's like, how can they cover up something that they can't control?
Well, so it's not that virulent. So virulence is like how much what percentage of people who get it end up dying. Like it kind of is a rating of severity. So it's not that virulent, but it's very contagious.
Okay, so
yeah.
that's the thing. How can you cover up something that's hella contagious like that?
That's why it's China. They're the ones that they have everybody locked down, man. Like, how do you?
My problem would be like, what does that mean?
How do you have internet and? Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
Well, what does cover up mean? Like they, like I that's what I'm not understanding about, like how they could stop something. Like I get, okay, somebody's doing some research. We're not gonna tell nobody, but like once it's out, shit happens, shit hits the fan. I don't understand okay, actually, you know what? I'm gonna go back. They did kill the doctor who, I'm not gonna say they killed him. He died mysteriously of coronavirus, and he was a young man. He was maybe in his mid 40s, 50s, well out of the risk population. And I mean, my man was dead in a week. So yes, we have seen that coronavirus itself is capable of doing this, but we also know for a fact that China is capable of doing this. That's where I'm a little bit confused. Why would they, I get why they would kill this dude, just shut him up. But like, it doesn't serve them. It doesn't help anybody to stop this guy. He was trying to stop a problem that is also China's problem. It's not like, even if the shit's planted or not, like they have to go through this. They got billions literally of people over there. Who does this serve? How are you, improving your own national position by tearing down the United States when we're already on the decline, low key? I mean, like we're kind of imploding ourselves. Like it kind of just seems like a misstep, unless, you guys are trying to theorize that China's out here like with the initial intention, the initial supervillain mentality of like, yo, we about to release some shit, it's about to go down. Suddenly, lo and behold, James Bond slides in and fucks up their plan. And then now we have the situation that we have where it's broken out of whatever lab it might have been created in. It's spread across Wuhan. It's spread across the world. It's out of our hands. It's out of control. But that initial production, I guess. Is that where we're thinking right now? I'm just trying to see the motive
of the United States claiming it was a cover up. There was a cover up.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's information wars, narrative, trying to control the narrative.
You gotta keep control of the people, I guess.
Yeah.
In China, they have to keep control of their people. They can't let them feel like they have lost control. Because especially with all this stuff with Hong Kong over the last 6 months before this started, they were going through it. And their sovereignty was being tested.
Yeah.
And so they had to really step down. And so now they show that they can't even handle this, even despite all of the stuff they had been, trying to crack down on. And it's like, y'all can't even handle this little thing. So they had to kind of show face, I feel like, to their countrymen.
No, that's a very good point, because despite having a strong hand in the nation, the government having a strong hand in the nation of China, because of the structures in place, is also very fragile. It's like that one moment of backlash or people sort of rising up and rebelling. You need one spark and the whole nation goes off. And I think China knows that. That environment of authoritarian government, Is China technically authoritarian?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if authoritarian is different from communist.
Yo, you need to talk to some Chinese people for real, man. See how life is crazy over there. It's like you wouldn't even be able to imagine how your relationship with the government is completely different than it is here.
Yeah. No. Actually, I did have an interesting conversation with the fellow from China. I was in my first stats class here at Northeastern. He, a lot of international students come to Northeastern for their graduate degrees, and the professor I had was a Russian woman, and she's a very mindful type of lady. She teaches mindfulness, and so we would have kind of these interesting discussions about life and whatnot and statistics. But we started talking about somehow China and being in America, and he said straight up, America is the place to be. He said he didn't say he hates China, but he says you can't do anything in China. And my Russian professor said the same thing about Russia and how they both love America and they both love being here in America. I should take back the love America part. I don't know about that, but they love being in America.
I mean, listen,
I don't know if that's different.
We definitely take freedom for granted over here, man. We've been born and raised in it, so it's easy for us to not, understand these authoritarian rules. But I mean, we get some opportunities that, other people don't. We got to pay for them a lot of times, a la capitalism. But
well, so we're going to hold that for another podcast. The Politics, Coronavirus Chronicles Politics Edition. I don't know if the streets are ready for that kind of heat. I don't know if they're ready for that RTBTH heat. Anyway,
not yet.
Thank you for tuning in. This is RTBTH, a.k.a. Real Talk Beyond the Headlines. That voice that you heard was super co-host Herschel. And the other voice that you heard was the Instigator. But today,
let's go.
He is
The investigator.
the investigator of the biomedical sciences. Herschel, I think you know what we're on the podcast for, man. Tell the people what it is.
Listen, guys, so we're here today. Yes, everything is about Coronavirus Chronicles these days, but we're trying to take a little different angle, having the investigator on with us. We want to kind of get more into the virology. This dude, he's been creating viruses since he was 3 years old. He's pretty much, betting the game out here, pulling up from the fucking logo. Shit is crazy.
Hey, man, chill out, man. We don't want the FBI pulling up, man.
Much respect, though.
Please, God.
But, Ehi, you're definitely here today to give us, a bit of the taste of, as a geneticist.
Herschel, real quick, though, man. I mean, you're a public health expert. You're a rising epidemiologist, but rising epidemiologist doctor to be. So, you know, we got to hear from you too.
I think
I'm here to learn.
Arguably, you know more than me,
you know.
about this.
I mean, I understand more of the, you know, I guess larger concepts. I'm here to give the fucking national and population wise viewpoint, but I'm also interested in hearing about like the virus, because that's how we actually learn about how the shit is going to affect the millions and millions of people or whatever.
Well, you know, I find it interesting because the coronavirus, the pandemic, brings all of these sciences together, and you can't really have the discussion without one without the other. And the thing that really like drove this in for me is like the anxiety and hysteria aspect of it. You know, when shit really started to pop off, because I never realized before that hysteria is just like mass anxiety. It's like a pandemic of anxiety, and people and the issue is that there's no coordination, there's no unity, so people go crazy. But you know, we're not going to talk about that. I'm just a measly psych major.
Dude, but that's some crazy insight, man. But yeah, I mean, we don't have to talk about that now, but that's kind of crazy because like I feel like I got some of that at one point, man. I was starting to have my allergies like, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Yeah. I've been like through Newark and Chicago. I was like, yo, man, I might low key have this. So I was kind of worried about it too, man. Even though I know that I didn't have it, it was like it was actually a sincere feeling you have inside. You're like, oh crap, I might be on the road to death, you know. But
yeah, it's the other thing that I think you can speak on Tunde is I mean, the masses of misinformation that's been coming out as well, and how it's been affecting people psychologically. I guess we spoke a little bit about it the last time we were on, but I am still fascinated by, I mean, you called it a war of misinformation earlier. And I mean, we're all susceptible to that since we all have our own sources of media. We're not, you know, journalists ourselves finding out or in a lab figuring out what the fuck is going on. So I'm always fascinated by like how we've stirred up this mob mentality in the first place. Some of it obviously being Trump talking shit, but like on a more individual level, you know, you're seeing, you know, people in, you know, grocery stores and environments, you know, spouting off, oh, well, I heard about this, and oh, that's not 6 feet that you're standing next to me. And I've definitely seen multiple near fights break out in Home Depot, Walmart, more than the usual, because, you know, niggas already wild out in Walmart sometimes. But Walmart, Kroger, K. Roger, it's been bad news.
Indeed, man. Yeah, I want to read more about it. So when we get back on the podcast, I'll share some of my insight. You know, I have some general insights, but, you know, got to do my Googles. Anyway, like I said, like Herschel said, this podcast, for me, I just want to get the general basics of coronavirus. You know, I'm doing all this reading and shit, reading articles. When I have a personal geneticist on speed dial, I got a personal epidemiologist on speed dial. You know what? Let's start off with the basics. Herschel, I know that you know about this too, so jump in. What the fuck is a virus? I know it infects you and shit. I know there's RNA.
Oh god.
What the fuck is a virus?
I mean, dude, it's like a
break it down to he.
I mean, we can take it back to like how people think viruses evolved. They're, you know, but I honestly, it's crazy because they're not actually a living thing. So most people think of bacteria and stuff and viruses in the same class, but they're not actually the same thing. Viruses they don't really use energy. They don't really, they only exist because they can. That's literally the only reason why they exist, is because they can, because they don't have like they don't have a goal, but the whole entire concept of a virus is that it's essentially just a unit of replication. I don't know how you can describe. It's like a robot that just goes around and replicates itself and just tries to take over everything if you allow it. You know, like these scary movies and whatnot. This is literally what a virus is. It's like it just takes over the cells in your body and moves on and makes more of itself, it clones, and it goes to the next place and does it again. And its goal is just to keep doing that. That's its goal.
Okay, that's
would
interesting.
It be,
go ahead, Herschel.
Would it be incorrect to and I agree. I get that it's not a living thing. Would it be incorrect to call it almost a parasite? Because it requires a living thing to reproduce. No, it can't reproduce on its own.
Yeah, it is. It is a parasite. But parasites, they don't need another organism in order to like actually reproduce. You could take it out of the organism and it would reproduce on its own because it kind of reproduces itself. It just needs nutrients. That's what a typical parasite, like a worm or, some giardia, some, unicellular organisms, stuff like that. Yeah, those are parasites, but they're different from viruses where the viruses actually use all of your junk. It literally uses all of your stuff to make more of itself. It doesn't have any real mechanism to make its own self. It got that from you. And so a parasite doesn't, in the typical sense of like organic parasites, they usually don't need you to provide everything. If you give it nutrients, sometimes you can actually grow them in a petri dish. They have all the nutrients they need.
And to be clear, there are healthy viruses too. No, like they're not all, detrimental to our health. I would imagine like a good parasite normally wouldn't want to kill its host so that it can, if we're thinking of something as a living thing, it can survive and continue on forever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was, I used to work with aphids as an undergrad, and they have symbiotic bacteria that live in their gut. And these symbiotic bacteria, they just essentially either provide nutrients to the aphid or they provide protection against like infectious causes. So they help them fight infection. Well, there's one of these bacteria, Hamiltonella, that lives in the gut of the aphid. And basically it's infected with a bacteria virus. And that bacteria virus is what protects it from wasp eggs. The wasps try to lay eggs inside them. And this bacteria, only if it's infected with the bacteriophage, will it be able to defend them against those parasite wasp eggs that live in they get laid inside the aphid and destroy it. So these bacteriophages are actually good because they help the bacteria in the aphid's gut provide a benefit, and then the benefit for the bacteria is that then the aphids have an incentive to retain them. Does that make sense?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Oh.
A little bit. Fascinating.
There's bacteria. Oh, well, whatever. There's viruses that live in, there's viruses that live in all kinds of things. So there's plant viruses, there's bacteria viruses, there's human viruses, there's cat viruses. There's all kinds of viruses. So this one is just a potentially beneficial one. But, we probably have many in our body that are beneficial.
Yo, I did not know that plants could get viruses.
Man, I'm saying.
Wow.
What the heck is the world coming to that plants are getting viruses?
I mean, and I get it. This ain't no new shit. I feel like way the fuck back in some science class, I read about some of the like viral mechanisms and the way that it reproduces its RNA is similar. RNA and or DNA, depending on what kind of virus it is similar to our own mechanism. Like we're all using the same genetic material and the same genetic code and shit like that. Do you know if there's any like, I don't know, evolutionary basis of like, our genetic reproductive system, aligning with theirs, mitosis, meiosis and shit?
Herschel, man, that's a good question. I want to ask something in conjunction with that. Is there something inherent in the molecules that comprise RNA and DNA that requires reproduction? Because why can't the RNA just exist and not reproduce from the virus? And sorry to hijack your question, Herschel. If you could answer.
So Herschel's question. What was it? Can you summarize the question, Herschel? Because Tunde got me distracted.
God damn it, Tunde. I mean, basically, all right. So
I thought it was a piggyback question.
I think they were completely
hell nah. Fucking.
This is psych major, guys. I'm sorry.
I just want to get his question in. God damn. All right, hold on. So basically, I was asking about, the basis of our genetic code and DNA structure is similar to viruses and all living things, right?
Yeah.
We all use the same CTAG I was curious if there was like any kind of evolutionary link between, viruses and how they reproduce and how we, not just humans, but any, living thing reproduces and replicates their DNA and RNA through mitosis and or meiosis.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so essentially, because of how viruses work, they probably they evolved after cells evolved. So either bacteria cells, whatever the hell kind of cell you're thinking about, because they need those things to exist in order to replicate. So they're probably like a degenerate sort of bacteria that eventually over time lost all of its necessity to have the mechanisms or the machinery to be able to replicate its own DNA. Because there's some bacteria that are permanently intracellular, so they live inside another cell and they just live there because they don't have a lot of the machinery it takes for them to live. And so people think that there were some full bacteria before that had all the stuff the bacteria have to do their thing, and eventually they found a cell type that they could live inside because that's just happened. And then over time they just lost all of the unnecessary bits and tidbits of their own genome that they needed in order to be able to replicate itself. So essentially a virus would have to be the most extreme case of that, where it lost everything it required to maintain itself except for the genetic material, and the ability to get out of the cell and go to the next cell. So I think they're all from the same thing. So I think the bacteria, which are probably the first cells to be able to be infected, were just the viruses came off from them at some point in some way. But I mean, I'm not an evolutionary biologist. I actually know. This is my speculation, but I don't think it's
sound like a good speculation to me, bro.
I don't think it's out of the line of what people think.
Bro, I'm calling you up when I need to write my dissertation in a couple years. I got you on speed dial too, bro. So these are definitely I'm a psych for sure. Tunde, what was your question?
Man,
Yeah. So my question was like, is there something inherent in DNA and RNA that it has to be replicated? Because if there's no machinery to reproduce, why has nature developed this sort of like casing, aka the virus, essentially to reproduce the RNA? Or is there another reason why the virus is reproducing?
I mean, as far as we know, there's really literally no reason why the virus exists. We don't know. I mean, like, it doesn't serve. I mean, it's just like a bacteria. I mean, why do bacteria exist? They don't give a fuck about maintaining the ecosystem. They're just keeping alive because that's all they're made to do, is to keep going. Make more of yourself. That's what the program is. There's nothing about a mouse or an elephant that tells it, you need to play your part in this ecosystem and like keep everything else going. It's just that since you're here, the system deals with you and you deal with the system and you just keep it pushing. So, the only reason why you need anything associated with, replicating DNA is just because it requires energy to make them. So if you're going to synthesize DNA, you have to have a source of making energy. That's the most basic requirement to replicate. You need energy. So since the virus doesn't have any way of getting energy, it's got to find somebody else to do it.
Wow. So it's really just a weird sort of backwards way of reproducing RNA that doesn't require like a sort of self-sustained energy source.
Yeah, somebody else has to provide the energy.
Wow, that's real fucked up. Anyway,
I know what? It's the most extreme of parasites. They're just completely useless in most cases.
Well, not right now. If it turns out that their goal is to erase humanity, they're not doing a very good job, but they're off to a decent start.
So with that being said, this virus is not very good at doing that.
With that being said, all right, let's talk about the coronavirus. Sorry, SARS-CoV-2. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Because I did a little Google. Coronavirus is the form of virus. SARS-CoV-2, whatever it's called, is the second version of this SARS. Well, I don't know what the heck I'm saying. Herschel,
yes.
Help me out, man.
Keep going. Yes.
SARS.
Basically, coronavirus is the name of the disease classification. There are multiple streams. This is the 7th or 8th of any coronavirus stream. There are some older coronavirus streams that are more quote unquote common or just have been around before this one, that, you know, sometimes cause the flu and stuff, which is part of all the like past misinformation that we've gotten where people have been like, yeah, it's not that bad. Like some of that is, you know, we're using the previous information that we've had. And, you know, there were warning signs that it was going to be really bad and warning signs that the shit wasn't going to be bad. So, you know, we've kind of been behind the 8 ball there. But this current strain is a novel strain, which basically means it's brand new and seems to have just, you know, made a mutation, which also, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, he isn't that uncommon. Viruses mutate all the time, particularly because they're always fucking around with their genetic code. They're always fucking around with that, you know, DNA or RNA stream. And I mean, you could get something brand new every year the way you do with the flu. Where, you know, we have vaccines, but, you know, you kind of always have to renew that vaccine for some of the older shit like smallpox and fucking, you know, tetanus and, I don't know, polio and shit like that. There's all, you know, the virus isn't mutating so quickly, so they don't have to update their vaccines, right? You know, all the antibodies stay the same. Particularly for this virus. Yeah, and I'll wrap it up. Particularly for this virus, because, you know, the whole reason people are even getting sick in the first place is because they don't have the antibodies, because their immune systems have never seen it before. But that's pretty much it.
Hashtag novel coronavirus.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, all that stuff you said, it makes sense. I mean, there's tons of viruses out there, and the thing is that, especially for like even the respiratory group of viruses, like there's these already out there rapid respiratory tests or respiratory antigen or what is it? Respiratory pathogen tests. So there's these viral panels that people run in the emergency departments all the time for patients who come in with flu-like symptoms. So they run the flu panel, they run the respiratory virus panel, and there's known coronaviruses on that list already, even from before. So most of them tend to target that ACE receptor or the ACE enzyme, ACE2 enzyme. And so that's literally how all of them, well, not all of them, but most of them get into the cell, is they just bind to that. And it's supposed to, you know what ACE inhibitors are, right? The
definitely explain that.
So ACE inhibitors are just one class of antihypertensives. So basically the ACE angiotensin, which is what the A and A stands for, just causes higher blood pressure. So in the lungs is where the most of those enzyme receptors are. So they basically convert the angiotensin into the active form. And so if you can block that enzyme, then you can prevent it from making the substance that raises your blood pressure. So the thing is that when this virus binds, it actually just attaches to that enzyme, and then it just waits for the cell to do its normal recycling process, because the cell surface is constantly recycling all the proteins on its surface. There's tons of proteins. So it has a system of recycling them. So it takes them from inside and brings them in and then puts new ones in there. So that's how they get in. They're just like latched on. And so when the cell just goes and takes in that part of the cell membrane to recycle it, it just gets in that way. It's snuck in the back door. And so that's how they infect the cells.
Man,
that's how a lot of viruses infect the cells.
So this is really kind of trippy. Like, you know, I'm not a biologist. Also, just want to say, Herschel, you didn't say it on the last podcast, but you did in fact get a biology degree from Emory. So
it's true.
Shout out to you.
Shout out to the bio majors.
Gang.
Right. Shout out to the bio majors. But
fucking out here using our degrees and shit.
Yeah, man. Nobody has ever loved having a biology degree like they do right now, man.
Yes. Yo, so many times
The
I was
public
like, yo, how are we
approval.
gonna use this shit? And I worried, but man, I figured it out. Coronavirus figured it out.
Now you know why we got scientists.
Right.
This is why we have scientists, man. Biology majors and all these people.
Bio majors on podcasts all over the world talking shit, man.
We all sound like geniuses. It's like, damn, man, all this stuff goes on.
Yo, but on the real shit though, there's a very good chance that the United States science knowledge will increase by like 3 basis points or some shit like that. Like just the general fact of reading about immunology, about social distancing, about coronavirus, you know what I'm saying? Like people are bound to learn something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
the fear though would be
it's
they
true.
learn the wrong things. Like that's
God
I'm
damn
really
it, Herschel,
concerned
you have to point
because they're
out
out here
the
getting
the
fucking
negatives.
misinformation. Yes, I have to. I'm sorry, guys. I gotta. Bruh, I can't
All
let
right, well,
these niggas skate, man.
Let's go positive
too
for
much.
a little bit. Hey,
Okay,
man,
you're right, you're
what's your take on it?
No, I think it's good that people are actually learning biology and learning about comorbid conditions and seeing why doctors talk about obesity, hypertension, diabetes, all these things, because just like coronavirus does with it, you're dying quicker than everyone else too without coronavirus. So this just points to you know, how severe these things are. So this is just one example, but I mean, people have to really take into account, like, yo, the only reason why humans are here and you're living to 80 is because people cared about staying alive. You know, we figured out systematic ways to be able to make people stay alive. So maybe you should take that into account, learn something about it, so you can be living till 85. Otherwise,
You know what?
you know, you're gonna die. You know, a sad death.
You guys are right. You know, I take back what I said. I've definitely, you know, throughout this, you know, I've already been going to the gym even prior to this, but like I've made it a point during coronavirus to kind of stay, you know, physically active. And I've been able to talk some of my older family members into at least just doing some, you know, more steps and things around the house because of the fear and the concerns of coronavirus. Like, you know, a lot of these, and I agree with you, the mental or the healthcare system for America is going to change dramatically after this. And it behooves us, like I said last time, to be healthy. So I agree with you that if people are more informed just about the comorbidity aspect of, you know, not only coronavirus, but other shit that could go down. I see that as a positive. It sucks that it has to be this tragedy, I guess. But honestly, the only way people were gonna start reacting is if, you know, there was some kind of fast response or some kind of, you know, impact that they could see. Most of the time when people are, you know, smoking cigarettes for 40, 50 years or some shit, they don't see the immediate effect. So, you know, there's no risk, overt risk that they can see. But with this, you know, the risk is right there. Oh, you know, maybe I should stay at a good weight or, you know, make sure I'm breathing properly and getting cardio and shit like that. Because coronavirus or something else might take me out just like that. You know, life is fleeting, as they say.
Exactly.
But you know, if this forces us to value life more, I see that as an absolute win.
Man, I hate
but
to
you're
say
right
it.
though. Oh, my bad. Let's say what you got to say. Because
I was gonna say, man, I hate to
Put
say
some
it, but
stuff.
I think we're gonna have to do a Silver Linings podcast because there have been a handful of them.
Yeah.
Word to the stimulus check, but also, I mean, pollution, man. I saw some Instagram photos of how there's so many things more visible along the skyline now because pollution is reduced so greatly. Science is another silver lining, but I'm not trying to claim any positive benefits to the coronavirus.
Yo, we could definitely do a little hate to see it / love to see it segment and have some positive stuff, bro. I got some shit, man.
Okay, let's get it. And I do believe that we have a special Get Your Mans that we need to get to, but we'll table that for now.
Yes. Oh, all right. But so the first thing, I guess I'll get to, you know, some lighthearted hate to see it and shit like that. This is basically the end of the malls. To me, department stores is pretty much a wrap.
Damn.
Macy's has already been closing down hella stores and shit.
JCPenney filed
suck
for
'cause,
bankruptcy.
you know,
Oh shit!
JCPenney filed for bankruptcy. Neiman Marcus filed for bankruptcy.
Oh,
And
yes.
a lot of these
Yes,
are
they
like,
did.
yeah, they're like anchor
Hate to see
stores
it.
for malls. You know, that's not,
Hate to see
you know,
it.
it's not the small fucking, you know, Jamba Juice and shit that's holding your local mall in place. It's the Macy's that's paying real rent or owns the building and everybody's paying rent to them. If they're up out of there, you know, everybody else there has a problem on their hands. The next one I got is, we talked about this a little bit. Fucking Bill O'Brien must have had coronavirus on the brain when he traded DeAndre Hopkins away for fucking nothing. Yes, we are, partially a sports podcast, so I gotta bring that shit up. The next most recent fucking news that makes my fucking blood boil is the Patriots seem to have fucking traded Gronk to the Bucks. This punk ass Gronk takes a fucking year off to retire, to rest his body, and then come back. I myself personally, as a Falcon fan, am not, too perturbed, even though it sounds like, I'm a little anxious. I got a little bit of COVID anxiety going.
You know who the Bucks should have picked up, man? They should have also picked up Todd Gurley.
Yep, I was thinking that too.
They would have had the super team of the century.
Yeah, I've been talking myself into it, but I think this man Tom Brady is washed. I said it on the podcast. I think that he's about to be out here looking like Peyton Manning's wild ride, his last ride without the defense. I don't think he's going to be able to connect with those wide receivers. I know they're talented, but coronavirus got these niggas out here social distancing. I'm not worried about it. We're going to see. I may or may not have already placed a couple of bets against them winning the division with a few people. That's how confident I am. And that was before the Gronk shit. So we'll see if this fucking veteran Tom Brady can come down here, start a new system, and run shit. I don't believe so, but I'm going to be upset. But that's my hate to see it.
Okay.
I mean,
the last one I got. What's up?
You sure that wasn't just hate?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm hating hard as fuck. Don't worry.
All right, man.
It's just a little bit of both. Yes, very upset. Punk ass Bill Belichick. Why did you make that trade, bro? What the fuck? Gronk is made of glass. He's definitely not. I got more. Fuck out of here.
Keep going.
Gronk is definitely not playing 16 games. My man sat out, lost 70 pounds in the offseason. There's no fucking way. He takes one hit. It's a wrap. It's a fucking wrap.
I don't
might be true.
People.
I don't think Gronk wanted to come back to the Patriots. That's why he asked for the trade, right?
Exactly.
Probably.
Yes.
So Belichick ain't have a
He's about to
choice.
be him. No, Belichick could have just not traded him and he would have stayed retired. Like Belichick did something to get something out of this. He got a 4th round draft pick, which is better than nothing, I guess. But that dude is always like gaming the system and trading somebody just barely too early, or right before they got a drug charge, or right after they serial killed like 8 dudes. That's the Patriot way. So I don't know what to tell you. The last one I have is
go ahead, because I got one.
Okay.
Keep going.
Vince McMahon has filed bankruptcy for the XFL, which is very sad. But we got to remember, bankruptcy is different for these big, corporations and shit. Obviously it definitely impacts, the little people who are working for him and shit. But I mean, we definitely can laugh at the figureheads and take some joy out of this. So that's what I'm doing. What you got, Toon?
Yeah, that was good, man. I think that might be a new RTBTH segment, man. We got a couple interesting ones. We got unpopular opinions. We got get your mans. And we also
can't wait to get your mans in a minute.
We always gotta shout out our hypothetical non-sponsors because they haven't sponsored us yet, but they will eventually sponsor us. But I got
coronavirus on that sponsor right now.
Heck yeah, man.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to the Coronavirus Chronicles, but I got one that I love to see. Okay. However, I want to share with you a conspiracy theory before I tell you what I love to see. Both of which are about the NFL. The conspiracy theory is that the NFL hired some scientists to create the coronavirus so that they could dismantle their North American rivals, aka the NBA and the MLB, but also the XLF, so that they could continue to prosper.
Okay, young conspiracy theory. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And you want to know why I know that conspiracy theory to be true? Because the NFL has not told us anything about the Patriots and the Bengals cheating situation from earlier, and I've been waiting. I have been waiting to hear the results
They hope
of that.
you forgot. They hope you forgot.
Exactly. Exactly. Goodell is out here rubbing his hands like Birdman, like, yep, coronavirus, that shit worked. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Man, well,
punk ass Goodell need to be investigating this fucking Gronk trade. That's bullshit.
You know, the thing that I love to see though is I feel like this is going to be the Brady trade or Brady leaving is going to be the beginning of the long and destructive downfall of the Patriots. Because I think that in some way, I don't know how, but I really hope that it happens, the coronavirus is going to somehow expose the Patriots and their cheating ways that go back 15 to 20 years. And I think that Tom Brady and Gronk leaving, like literally at the drop of a hat, this part, I'm being serious, but they left like it was nothing. Super Bowls, and AFC championship games, playoff games, money, all these contracts and whatever, and they just leave? Like, I think there's something going on inside the Patriots inner circles that is going to be exposed, and the Falcons will get what is deserved.
You know what? You might be onto something, Tunde.
Thank you.
I just remembered a particular fact. Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, who was just caught up in a fucking massage parlor scam. You know who was owning that massage parlor? You know what ethnicity those people who was working in the massage parlor was? Yeah, y'all know what time it is. Yeah, the feds busted in. Robert Kraft was like, you know what? Hold up, wait a minute, hold up. Y'all not about to get me. Are you
suggesting that massage parlor was ground zero for the development of coronavirus?
Listen, I'm not saying. I'm just saying. That's all I'll say. I know the NSA, the feds are listening.
Yo.
This may or may not be a CDC laptop that I'm recording on right now. So I'm gonna keep it brief. But listen, somebody follow the money. That's all I'm saying for real. Follow the money. Follow the money. That man's a billionaire. We need to be looking into it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, he did have a whole plane full of PPE just ready to go.
Yep. He was prepared. Yep. Now he's out on a yacht somewhere in the Pacific.
It's all jokes, RTBTH listeners, because I know.
Yeah, man.
Next thing,
I would say this. So I was watching Fox News, man, and there was I wasn't watching it actually. I was reading. I take that back. But I watch Fox News like every day. Man. Because
really,
I have to know what these people are saying. I have to know. Otherwise,
so
I feel
true.
like I'm in a tunnel. Anyway, so I got this news update, and it was semi hilarious, semi like cringeworthy. But there's this lady who was like a virologist at the NIH. She's working on the coronavirus vaccine apparently, and she's black. And she's like 34, so she's the same age, like demographic as some of the girls we know. So she's on Twitter putting up her, whatever the heck she's talking about, and Fox News took it upon themselves to try to turn her into a racist. So
oh my gosh.
She was bringing up some of the issues with the disparities in deaths and the coronavirus toll, and
right.
She sort of suggested that it was more of the same discrimination that black people have suffered, but she also made it seem like it was race related, that doctors wouldn't treat African Americans and let them die. And they were like harping on that, saying that she's like a racist. Well, they didn't say she was racist. They just suggested it as being something of that sort. You know how they never say it, but it's crazy because they're like emailing the NIH and trying to email her bosses to like get her disciplined or fired or removed.
What?
Yeah, it was that serious, man. It was that serious. But I was like, damn. But it's funny though, because like the stuff that she said that they would turn away African Americans or potentially mostly poor people. But in America, that happens to be a lot of African Americans because of all the historical discrimination. But she was suggesting that they wouldn't do that. I mean, that they would actually turn them away, but they've actually already been doing it. Like from the past, they already turn away poor people if they feel like you don't have a severe disease or anything that's emergent for them to treat. So they will turn people away. A lot of private hospitals will do that. So
oh wow,
there's actually precedent for that. There's like an EMTALA law. I don't know what it stands for, but it says that you have to like render medical services to somebody in serious need. And so they determined that there was a way that they could actually get away with it. So it wasn't like she was saying something that was completely unheard of, but theoretically it's unheard of in the coronavirus times, but they were trying to make it seem like she was suggesting some crazy shit that she's like the biggest racist, blah blah blah, and yeah, and I was just like, man, I've seen it. It was on the line, but I'm like I've seen this all the time, man. I'm just I don't think this is at all noteworthy, but they try to ruin her career about it. I think that they're fucking with her
Damn.
right now.
That
Yeah.
is messed up, man. And the thing is, like, I'm not gonna advocate or support Fox News doing that, but they could probably get away with just like mentioning her name, because they do this for dog whistling to their people that watch their show.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the point of it.
Yeah,
I bet nothing's gonna come of it with her end of the situation. I mean, her bosses would probably talk to her and be like, "Hey, you got to cool it on Twitter, blah blah blah," because she didn't say anything that's like untrue, as far as I
Yeah.
can see. Except she
Right.
didn't stamp it down as like people would do it for a racist angle, which she didn't necessarily say that was it or not it, but it kind of seemed that way in her.
I mean,
her
I hate to
messages,
say it, but
but-
she's doing her own dog whistling in a sense. However,
Exactly.
the way she's doing it is based in some reasonable fact.
Yeah, and reasonable facts. Yeah, that there's precedent for people doing this, but
Yeah.
you
But the
know,
thing
I just
about
felt kinda
Fox is
bad.
the thing about Fox is like I said, you could all of the media sources sort of are hyperbolic to a certain extent, or they exaggerate or they manipulate the story, they massage the story. But you ain't gotta go like call her office and call her job and shit.
Bruh, they were doing that. Dude, this is what they did. They said that they contacted the NIH for comment, her department, they hit them up. So they might be trying to play it as the guise of, oh, we're just investigating a story for our newspaper or whatever, our email list. But it's mostly because they want to just get her in trouble. It's not really about any investigation into like her or nothing. They just want to report her.
Yeah. Man, it's a crazy world we live in right now, man. I've become
Yo.
so disillusioned with the media.
People still find time for racism, man.
I will say that, this, when we say like talking political, like it's not always necessarily about candidates and shit, but like this coronavirus shit is about to get very, very political, particularly with the media. Even here at the CDC, we got, they sent out mass emails like, yo, reporters may be reaching out to you to ask you questions about this, this. And they're trying to like kibosh all that. They're like, yo, don't talk to nobody. We don't want to see your name and no fucking papers, don't be on the news talking shit. None of that. I probably shouldn't be here right now, but no, I'm fine. I'm sure this is perfectly fine. Even for our like higher up leadership, particularly people who have to get in front of the camera and actually talk to media members, there's going to be heads are going to roll. I hate to say it, but when something happens, people need to find people to blame. And, the highest people in office aren't taking credit for it. So or taking, I don't know, the buck doesn't stop there. So, they'll probably
They're trying
replace
to
the
skate,
director
man.
of the CDC soon. Yeah, they're trying to skate. They're trying to make their money, get off clean, leave a good legacy, regardless of the lives that the shit's gonna cost. So speaking of that, if y'all would like to get into this, get your mans. I can't hold it back too much longer.
Yo, before you say that,
let's
man,
get-
I would just want to read a headline from the Washington Post about
Okay.
this place that you're about to bring up. But they said that this state leads the race to become America's #1 death destination. Get your man's Herschel.
Yeah,
Florida.
I don't even know what the fuck to say. So, listeners, I am here in Atlanta, Georgia, headquarters of the CDC, jewel of the South, holding it down, trying to stay, socially distant and all that good shit. I wash my hands. I don't have any masks, sadly, but, whatever. But our, governor.
You go die,
our recent-
Herschel. You go die.
I know, man. I know. Our recently elected governor, who finessed his way into office, has decided that he's going to reopen the state of Georgia, particularly a lot of businesses that require you to be not socially distant, places where you're close together. On Friday, he's actually opening up barbershops, nail salons, shit like that. And then on Monday, restaurants and things like that are going to be opening up. Whoa. And I understand some of why he's doing it, because they are trying to fucking avoid the bankruptcy that they're putting our economies in. But they're also not thinking about the people. They're also being creative again with the numbers. And across the nation, there's like 22 million people who have been filing for unemployment. In the state of Georgia alone, I don't know the exact number, but it's a couple million, I believe. They can't afford to pay all these fucking people. So I see that they're going to try to open up the businesses to get people to at least not be able to claim their unemployment. Not necessarily that they're going to get their exact jobs back, which is the difference. But I believe to actually acquire unemployment, you have to show that your unemployment is unwillful. So if the government, like, for example, if the government closes all these particular businesses by mandate, you get a check. But if they open all this shit up and you're still willfully saying, oh, yeah, well, I don't want to get sick because coronavirus is out there. Ooh, scary coronavirus. Governor Kemp is like, nah, bro, you can't have it. And this man is a fool because he's still very, very naive and just learning about, how this virus travels, how things are, going to progress and get worse, like you said. And yes, at some point, we have to open up regardless. Shit is going to get worse before it gets better. But bro, he's actually opening up Georgia before his initial mandate of April 30th is up. And it was only
that was his mandate.
That was his mandate. I just read something that the president is, strictly against it. There have been a bunch of interviews and part of this is the president's fault, who gave states, the option to do this, I guess, so that he doesn't seem like the bad guy. Big bad government, forcing, Republicans hate that shit, forcing businesses to stop and go bankrupt and shit like that. But it's not just Georgia, it's Tennessee, it's South Carolina that are also gearing up to come back. The mandate that we as a federal agency at the CDC have was 14 days, we are indefinitely teleworking until there's a legit 14 days of reduction in new cases with all these different stipulations. There can't be any reduction in the number of tests being being given. And it's 4 or 5, maybe, 10 particular things before we can even go back to work. And, if the feds aren't going back to work, I don't know why he would okay, Joe Schmo, who is going to have to go back to work and, maybe not be able to even get his job back, but won't be able to get the unemployment. And then for the people who are going to be able to go back to work, what the fuck are they going to do with all their kids if they have kids? Schools are still closed. It doesn't really make sense to. It's a bad jumpstart of the economy. This is setting us up to potentially have to reclose down for some stupid shit, which again, I don't know how we'll, get through. At this point, are we just going to have to suffer through everything? I feel like this dude has set us up for failure, to set himself up for the only success that, you can really see out of this, which is minimizing government and saving them a penny. Because Georgia's Republican ass is definitely not going to raise taxes, which would pay some of that unemployment that people clearly really need right now. So we're really just stuck between a rock and a hard place because, Republicans ain't shit. They care about themselves. Not everybody. I hate to be that blunt. We may have some Republicans on the podcast of people who may be voting red in the near future. Instigator. But,
Yep.
That's it. That's the reality.
I'll say this. So I personally have come to the conclusion that the coronavirus is not going away until we have a vaccine. So I think it's actually gonna take a break and then it's gonna come back in the fall, late fall, and it's gonna be worse. I feel like the way people are reacting right now, it's you guys are gonna come outside and protest. Are you fucking serious? Has it really gotten that bad? Maybe for them it has, but that's the part that I don't know. And I think when these these, Republican governors or all these other folks who are talking about getting their people back to work, and some of the reasons you suggested, Herschel, that they might be trying to avoid paying people because it might bankrupt the state. My question is, I think it's mostly a question of how much information asymmetry there is. Is there like, because we get to see a lot of the medical, the projections, a lot of the epidemiological projections for how the infections are going to scale based on whatever parameters, and they put that all out there. But we don't really see any of the economic models. It's like, how much is the economy going to suffer the longer we put this on? I mean, this should be the governor's jobs. I mean, I don't know. People don't want to talk about money, but
Yeah.
for the people who are protesting, that's their main reason for protesting. I mean, I guess they
Yeah.
want to go watch baseball or whatever, but I think the majority of people who are concerned is because of money, and we don't really see the money, or people don't talk about it openly, as in as much detail as they do the medical side of things. I think they should really do a better job of that, because it might be the best thing to do. I mean, otherwise, the when Trump comes up there and says, yeah, there's a lot more harm than dying from a virus, you could have other things that are even worse that'll cause people to die too. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's true. I mean, that's potentially true, but how true is it? Is it something that I can analyze and look at and be like, oh, this is definitely better or worse? I don't know. So that's what they need to work on if they want to convince people it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
But people just don't want to use the money argument and say like, oh, yeah, for the money's sake, we should go back to work, even though that's
Yeah.
like 90% of the reason why you'll go back.
Yeah, it sounds callous. You can't say it and, garner public support because people will think of you as callous. But yeah, 100%. I mean, our society is driven by money. So, I mean, it makes sense. I do understand why he's doing it. I think he fumbled the bag in terms of how this happened. And I mean, you just got to present a better face. We talked about this last time of like,
Yeah.
motherfuckers don't trust the government right now. Like no matter what information and news was going to come out and is going to come out, people are not going to trust that shit. Whether they decide to go back to work or don't. We're in a society where people can't trust each other, which is sparking, like I was mentioning, some of the like fights and arguments I've seen in public places. There's a lack of trust.
Hey,
Everybody is
just
either on edge
exactly.
and like it's the extremes that I'm seeing of like, oh, I'm gonna be super nice to you and leave out food for my neighbors who might not have been able to get to the grocery store, and here some dry goods or some shit. Or yo, what the fuck? Why are you closer than 6 feet to me? Oh, are you trying to cut me in line? Oh, are you trying to grab my toilet paper? This is the one I grabbed. Crazy shit. I definitely saw. Oh, my love to see it. I mean, this is a toxic love to see it, but one of the ones I have is World Star videos are about to pop the fuck off. This shit's about to be back in a major way. I definitely saw a group of I shouldn't say that. I saw a group of people. You should bleep that. In Home
Why not?
Depot. And bro, we was leaving. All right, so I've been doing home projects and shit over this break. And we're in Home Depot grabbing some stuff, and like the people next to us are scanning their shit, doing whatever. And dude starts to push his card out, and like one of the employees jumps up, like, oh, excuse me, I need to see your receipt. And like all the heads turn around, like, oh shit, it's about to be a problem. Uh-oh, you already know. And dude immediately pops off. Yo, you didn't ask to see anybody else's receipt. What the fuck? And she didn't. Like, that's very true. But I would imagine she had still been watching, like, all of the customers going through and stuff. Like, it's one of the self-checkout joints because apparently, that's the society we live in now. But, I'm scanning my goods. I turn and I can see Buddy is still, like, paying for the stuff. Like, he's still, like, counting through ones and shit, trying to make sure they have it while dude is trying to push the cart out the door. And I'm like, come on, dog. If you gotta... I'm not condoning stealing, but like, be cool, man. You didn't help your situation by popping off at this, nice lady who was just trying to do her job. So more Home Depot employees and shit come over, dude. And it's a group of people. He has to call one of his boys back over to get him some more cash and shit. And I'm like, damn. At least you could have had the money to pay for it, so we could all win. And she did, and we could be on your side. Like, yo, she didn't check everybody for their receipt. What the fuck is wrong with you? But instead. They were out here looking stupid, and I was like, fuck, man, why did it have to be you? Why, fuck, the shit you're buying isn't even like some dope shit. It looked like they were trying to build like a backyard, like doggy area and shit with like artificial astroturf and dog associated shit. And I was like, bro, what? That's what you spent your stimulus check on? And in fact, you might not even have the whole thing because I see you over there counting crumpled up ones, bro. You just had to call your boy over to get some more shit out of his fucking fanny pack. Nike fucking crossbody, excuse me. My bad, you know. I know that's the swag these days. But I'm old as fuck now, so I don't know.
Man,
but
I
this
know
shit was
that-
hilarious.
Yeah, I got a little tidbit before you go on. You're talking about how the trust in the government is super low. Well, there's a Pew Research poll that came out. I guess at least the most recent one was last year, April, and guess where public approval of the government was back in Kennedy's day?
Is percentage points 1 to 100,
Science.
right?
Percentage point, yeah. Like what percent of people say that they are supporting the government? They trust them.
Oh, Kennedy. Oh, it was a good 80, man.
High.
Yeah, man.
60. I'll give you 60.
Exactly.
80?
It was like 70 something, 77. It was pretty up there.
Kennedy is my boy, man. I don't know shit about him. Obviously, never met him, but
You got swag, man. What
he has swag. Yeah.
No, he said he got splacked.
Oh
I'm sorry. That's very
God,
insensitive.
Herschel. He did
Yo, I
indeed
heard-
get splacked, but he also had swag. Damn.
Yo, conspiracy theories. I heard it was the mob. I heard the mob did that shit.
Oh,
Anyway,
you
let's
were watching
continue.
what's that? You were watching that stuff on Netflix. What's it called?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of it, but yes, that's exactly where I got that theory. Yes,
The
something on
De Niro,
Netflix.
Pacino.
Yes, there you go.
All those dudes came through.
Yes.
Yeah. So guess what it is now, or guess what it was during Obama's time?
It was still pretty low, wasn't it? Like 20.
No, I
25
mean Tea
maybe?
Party, man.
Yeah, man, it was 20 something. It's crazy. It was like in the 20s. Now
Yeah.
it's 17% of people trust the government. It's almost the all-time low. The lowest it's ever been was 10 back in 2011. That was during Obama, man. I think that was the peak of the Tea Party shit after they passed the ACA.
And also the
This was like
financial
when they
crisis,
really
man.
ramped it up.
They're not regulating all of this shit. The government's
Yeah.
not regulating them. Freaking, I've been listening to some Bernie Madoff stuff, and the SEC completely let that shit slide for a good decade.
Well, he was the SEC. That's how he let it slide.
You know what? Yeah. So exactly. The freaking government was probably not very easy to trust around then, but
yo, that's also how
Yeah.
empires fall. You know, you start to lose. You know, it does happen over time, obviously. But like, you know, you lose faith in the government. We've just been talking about that shit with China and them trying to, you know, keep their stranglehold.
shoot, man,
America
we're having
with
problems
its-
with it. People out in the streets protesting.
Yeah.
So, man, all right. Well, just to wrap up the get your mans, as we always say, Governor Kemp, whose mans is this?
Whose man's is this?
Get your mans.
Hey, get your man.
That one is for you, Herschel. That's your governor, man. Get your man.
It's not my
Get
man's.
Get
I
your
voted
governor,
for Stacey
bro.
Abrams.
Okay, well, Stacey Abrams. You know, we need some help. Come through somehow. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I see her over here tweeting this shit, but she need to do better at the polls, man. I don't know what happened. I know she got finessed. I know fucking
She got
Brian Kemp
finessed so
her.
hard, bro.
Yeah.
He's the one counting the votes. You think he's gonna lose?
Yeah.
Are you stupid?
Yeah.
Damn, man, y'all making me not trust the government too much, man. I'll say
Yo.
this.
Dude, he rigged. Like, there's no way he didn't. I mean, dude, there's no way he won in real life.
Probably
They
not,
were
man.
discarding votes. They were discarding votes left and right, bro. They're like, your vote don't count. Your
Yo.
vote don't count. Your vote
I'll
don't
say
count.
this: you can trust the CDC because we are scientists, but everybody that's affiliated with
yeah.
some kind of bread, nah.
Medical
NIH, you can trust
scientist
them.
approval.
Yeah.
Medical scientist approval is like 80-something%. It's like 87% for medical
the government?
scientists. Just medical scientists in general. Most of them are
Oh,
employed by
Or-
like labs, research people. They're mostly researchers. They're not involved with. I mean, you know, they might be hired by somebody private, but people
Well, you're
trust them in
saying
general.
the country's approval of medical scientists.
Yeah, they're
is
trusting
80%.
them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Trust.
For elected
May I
officials,
ask
about like
where
20,
you're getting
20%.
May I
Oh, it's from
ask
Pew
where you're
Research.
getting the approval ratings?
These are from Pew Research Center. This is
Okay.
the people who do all those research polls.
the public
Okay.
opinion surveys.
Yeah, they got a ton of different surveys, man. It's crazy.
So I want to rewind a little bit. Let's get back to the biomedical stuff, but I do want to roll in this information about Georgia trying to reopen. And I just want to throw a wrench into the conversation because let's presume that he's not completely off kilter for this decision. And I say this because, Ahi, maybe you can jump in and help me out here. But these antibody, what they call serology tests. Serology is a survey of the virulence. Well, I shouldn't say virulence now that I know that's about mortality, but the contagion.
Yeah, more about severity more than mortality. It's just a general sense of severity.
Of what virulence is?
Yeah,
okay.
That's what virulence is.
Well, the serology surveys track the virulence, the contagion of the virus. And they are doing studies in Washington. They're doing studies in Atlanta through Emory. Shout out to Emory. I see them on the news every day of my fucking life. You know, I mean, I love Emory, so I'm glad that Emory's getting some play. But anyway,
you sound kind of mad.
I mean, because every time that I look, online, it's like Emory this, Emory that, man. But I don't know, man.
They're trying to shine, man. These guys trying to shine.
I mean, yeah, they are.
Let
our
alma mater shine, man. They're gonna boost up the value of our degrees, man.
Facts,
man.
Yo, you should be retweeting all them shits. Yeah,
I know, right?
Every time Emory is mentioned. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just wish
I went
was
there.
mentioned
I
for
went
more
there.
things. For more things instead of when
You should just
gets...
retweet them and it just be like, "I went there." That's the only thing you say about it.
Yeah, I'm sure I could get some cool.
They did this with my tuition money
on its own. But
yeah,
these
that money went to good use.
These serology surveys, so they're suggesting, the results are suggesting that the virus has been much more contagious, and there are much more people who are not showing symptoms, which would suggest that the actual mortality rate is in the 0.5 or whatever, less than 1.1%. Bringing in the serology stuff, bringing in Governor Kemp. What if it's not as contagious and maybe it's not going to really disrupt, outside of what we're experiencing now, it's not going to disrupt the healthcare system much more? Could it be possible that maybe he's making the right decision? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the case was made. So this case was made early on, like well, not necessarily early on, but I guess a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that the infection rate is actually much higher than what we know, of the documented cases, just because of the scarcity of the testing. We couldn't really do accurate surveys apart from people who are having, moderate to severe symptoms from it. So, and people already estimated that they would be like that, but there was a study, at least the first people who talked about it were in Germany, that I know of. I mean, maybe other people have talked about it, but there was a study in Germany in this one town where a lot of people got coronavirus. People started getting sick. And then they found that they did this serology survey and found that 15% of the people in the town had antibodies for COVID-19. So, and the majority, almost all of those 15% of people didn't realize that they had coronavirus at any point. So they had either very mild or no symptoms at all. And so, the only thing that brings up the question for me is just that how specific is this test? Because there's other kinds of coronaviruses out there too that cause more of the common cold type symptoms. They don't really do a lot of lower respiratory infection stuff like this one. So, I mean, I wonder what the specificity rate is for it amongst coronaviruses. Because these serology tests, that's the thing, is that depending on what they use as the antigen, so whatever part of the virus that they're using to basically attract the antibodies. So basically the serology test works is that they have a piece of the virus and they just have a bunch of them, and then they're stuck to this plate, and they run your blood over it, and your blood will have antibodies. So if the antibodies bind, they can detect it. So this depends on how specific whatever that piece of the virus they used to attract the antibodies is for this particular coronavirus. So that's why they ask, they talk about the specificity of these tests. So I just wonder, how specific is it? Maybe they have other cold viruses that's cross-reactive. Who knows? But I mean, from what we can tell, it probably, especially with how quickly it spread, in places like Italy and stuff, like you would have to assume that there's a lot of people who didn't have major symptoms but were spreading it, because otherwise you would be able to track down the spread very effectively. Because if everybody who gets it gets really sick, you would be able to find out that, this guy obviously was in contact with this guy, blah, blah, blah. You would know because they would all be in the hospital. But it's not like that. So we know that for a fact it's much lower than what we estimate. Right. So, it may not end up being as severe as people think, but I mean, with the way people end up dying, it kind of sucks because they just can't breathe, man. It's a terrible way to go.
Yeah, that is quite disconcerting.
Do you know specifically what's, why you're not able to breathe? I understand that, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
So it's acute respiratory distress syndrome. At least that's what most of the people who end up dying from it die from. Some of them, they die from interactions with their comorbid conditions. But the way you hear about people dying quickly and from it, their lungs have all these infiltrates, they call them, on the X-ray or the CT. It's mostly because it's like a vicious cycle. So the virus gets in the lungs and it starts to replicate, then your body starts to essentially overreact. So it starts, attacking the cells that are making a lot of the viruses, and it kills them, and they release like a bunch of ooze that inflames the lungs, and then inflammatory cells go in there. And what they do is, by going in there, they're moving both immune cells, white blood cells and all those guys, with fluid, because it kind of makes the membranes in between, like the blood vessel membrane. So it makes a lot of that more permeable, so water and stuff is able to go from the blood into the lungs. And so that affects your ability to have air exchange. So it's essentially like puffy and swollen lungs inside, and you can't really exchange a lot of air or oxygen through essentially thick films of water that are sandwiched between like the air surface membrane and then the actual blood vessel where the air is gonna diffuse into. If there's too much water in that space, you're not going to be able to have actual oxygen exchange. So, you're breathing, but your lungs are kind of just like puffy and swollen, and there's no oxygen being transferred. So that's how you end up dying.
So first, two questions. What's the difference between a ventilator and a respirator? And where do those come into helping people survive and potentially recover?
So a ventilator is a respirator is, there's many different types. I don't know exactly what you mean by respirator, but when people talk about these ventilators, they talk about these companies bringing, ventilators. There's these machines that essentially pump air into your lungs. They can pump oxygen, they can pump room air, they can pump in anesthesia gas. So they use them for surgeries, they use them for patients in the ICU when you can't support your own breathing. So the ventilators are just like fancy machines that will pump in very specific amounts of air at a particular rate at different pressures to be able to force air into lungs that are sort of collapsing on themselves because they're getting too inflamed.
God damn it. That sounds messed up.
Yeah. So the people, you may have heard that people talk about that they have, post ICU syndrome. Part of that is sort of the problem with using ventilators for a long time. I mean, also you have an inflammatory process in your lungs, so it's going to generate a lot of scar tissue. But just being on a ventilator itself for a long period of time also damages your lungs. So people get off it, and their lungs aren't the same. They find that they get winded much easier. Some people recover mostly or fully, but some people, they never fully recover their lung function. So it's not just even that even if you manage to survive, you're going to be back to normal. It's that you're going to have to kind of rehabilitate your lungs in many cases.
Damn, bro, I did not. I'm learning so much.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
That's one thing about all of this. Like, I mean, and I get that, we each have our own expertise in each of these particular fields. And I hope y'all are learning some shit from me. But like,
oh yeah,
both you and Toon and Ehi, both you guys, man, I'm learning some shit. This is all very, very interesting.
Hey man, that's what we do at RTBTH Real Talk Beyond the Headlines, motherfuckers. Yeah, I am learning a lot. This is real interesting stuff. I just want to say, man, I've read a couple articles and I feel like we're gonna have a lot to learn about some of the long-term effects. People are still speculating, but there have been articles coming out saying that there could be some neurological effects because of the coronavirus. The
PTSD for sure.
What's that?
PTSD, man. PTSD.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, absolutely.
That's a real thing, man.
For the healthcare workers too, they're seeing people die on a regular basis.
Dramatic, man.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
And there's a certain level of like anxiety for healthcare workers. For one, some are choosing not to interact with their family, after they come back from work because they don't want to infect them. But some healthcare workers have to actually talk with their family members about potentially not coming back. It's scary as fuck. But maybe as a final sort of like biomedical topic here on this podcast, Ehi, you are indeed a quantitative geneticist. So before I get into my question, can you please tell us what the fuck that is?
Basically, it's pretty simple in the general sense. You're trying to figure out.
Oh yeah, pretty simple. Oh yeah, it's so simple, Ehi.
Right.
No, I mean not necessarily what you have to do, but I mean it's very simple. Like you're looking at the genes, like the differences between people's genes, all the little SNPs and all the little mutations and all those things, all those effects, and seeing how those translate into their phenotype, which is what they look like,
Right.
what kind of diseases they have, where they, all the different characteristics that are genetically encoded in their, in their body or behavior. You can essentially make that connection. So that's what quantitative genetics essentially is understanding that pattern.
So you're using predictive modeling in order to quantify your genetics. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of statistics. You're just essentially doing association tests and building models, trying to account for things. And so that's kind of where it gets hairy, is trying to figure out how to remove a lot of the noise in your model and be able to better represent the system that you think is, controlling that phenotype. So you have a bunch of different variables. Genes are one of them, but there's also environmental things that you can take account of that might also affect your phenotype. And so those are the things that you end up doing. And a lot of it is just, once you know kind of the general sense of how to do it, it's more about just like making sure your data is clean and represents what you think it is. So you're doing a bunch of tests in that sense. But, that's
actually doesn't sound that complicated now when you say it.
No, it's not that complicated at all.
I did understand more words in that than some of the other shit you've said earlier. So
Right.
that's good. I was like, oh shit, I do hella modeling. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, well,
you
all
can
of
do
us-
it too.
All of us are bound by, in our respective professions, we are bound by our love and interest for data, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a form of data analysis. It's an applied data analysis.
Okay, so now I'm about to get a little nerdy because I've been, I think both of y'all know that I aspire to do artificial intelligence based research for my dissertation, but I've been reading about statistical modeling and predictive modeling. Where in statistical modeling, you want to know exactly what is contributing to the phenotype. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah. So that's what my PhD was on. But I'm more interested in predictive modeling.
Yes, me too.
Which is, I think, where there's actually use. I mean, there's use for all that. I'm not going to say anything negative like that. But I'm more interested in the predictive side. But yeah, the statistical modeling is basically just to find out which factors are most important in controlling that particular phenotype or how they interact with each other. That's also potential. And then, what the key factors are to focus on if you want to, make a difference for whatever it is you're looking at.
Okay, well, now I'm going to get even more nerdy because I'm interested now, but there are too many predictors on a gene. Or you're using like gene sets or like what are the variables that go into the statistical model? Because there's too much. DNA is huge. It's a lot of data.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. This is why people struggle sometimes. Or this is what the field is struggling with. I'm not even saying people struggle sometimes with it. It's like people are struggling with having way too many variables and not enough differentiable, phenotypes. And
Right.
so what people are trying to understand is how you can better take account for all of them together, so you can sort of get like the sum of their inputs and figure it out. But because people have been trying to do GWAS studies, which are basically looking at single points of differences between a bunch of people, and you look at each point and say, does this particular DNA nucleotide make a difference in the phenotype? So you're doing all these association tests. Does it make a difference? Does it make a difference? One by one. And then you find the most important ones, and then you find out which genes they're in or nearby, and then you can say that gene makes a difference. And if you're really interested, then you can do more focused studies on trying to find the specific exact DNA mutation or variant that is affecting that trait through that gene. And then you can go and do studies in mice or whatever animals you want to do. You can knock out the gene, you can add extra copies, and you can see how it affects the phenotype. So that's the way you actually get down to the end and be like, okay, yes, this thing affects this final, the length of your arm or the color of your eye or whatever.
Yeah.
Even though that's overly simplistic, there's not one thing that controls any of those stuff, but you get the point.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not trying to be a proponent for any side of the coin, but this is why, particularly for genetics, because it's very complicated and there's a lot of genetic data, I presume. But that's why predictive modeling makes sense, because we don't actually care why your arm is longer than other people's arms. We just want to predict if you can get long arms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm more interested in, man. Because I mean, because you see all this stuff that I told you about, what you'd have to do to figure out exactly what controls something. You have to do all those tests. You have to go through all those. You have to knock out genes. It's very labor intensive. But if you have a good predictive model, I mean, not saying that making a predictive model is not labor intensive, but you don't have to go and go outside of your field too much to be able to, verify it. You just get another data set and then you try your model on that. If it works on like many data sets, then your model is good. That's kind of how you test it. You don't have to go and because you can't really, I mean, the way a lot of these neural networks work, you can't very well go back and piece it all together. It depends on what the network looks like, but
I found it
actually, you can't exactly get down to the core of it.
I found a graphic from a book I was reading. Was it a book? I think it was a book. Maybe it was a YouTube video, but it shows like the
Very different.
man, everything is all the same, bruh. I'm pretty sure at some point I probably had a dream that y'all were here doing the podcast with me, man. It's the coronavirus, man. But it was just basically like a graph of the type of model you're using and the interpretability, and the regression model is like the most interpretable but less predictive. And then it's a graph of interpretability and predictability, or predictive ability. And neural networks are at the very bottom to the right, where they're very predictive but completely uninterpretable.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the genetics, I bring it up because I was talking to you on the phone the other day, Ehi. I think we had a good conversation, and you were mentioning how the genetic variant of this coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, whatever it's called, is really unusual. And we were talking earlier about the range of illness from nothing, zero, absolutely nothing, to people getting their lungs filled with fluid and can't breathe. And a lot of people are dying, thousands, tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands by now. I don't know the numbers. I'm pretty sure it's in the hundreds of thousands are dying from this. And I just kind of want to understand what the genetics are that kind of had led to this. I think you mentioned that this is just like a very unusual, improbable genetic variant of the coronavirus. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of different. There's not too many viruses that go out there and can do that. They can be completely you can be completely asymptomatic and be infected, and also some other people they might just die, like flat out. I mean, I just feel like it's just a little different on the severe end. So I feel like there's viruses that, like the common cold. I feel like a lot of people get the common cold and they don't really have symptoms, because people catch a cold and they don't really know where they got it from. They don't know somebody who was super sick. Some people you get a bad cold. It's like, did you catch it from somebody who also had the feelings of a bad cold, or they just have a mild cold and then you had a bad version? So I feel like those milder end variations are already out there, but the severity, like the severe end of the scale, I feel like is very different from, it's a lot better at being severe than a lot of the common cold viruses that's related to. I think because it has a tropism for the lungs, so it's very specific to be able to get into those guys. Like if it can get down there and your immune system isn't robust, you might die.
Man, it's a cold world out here, man.
I'll add another thing is that you're talking about the genetic variation that might, in the human side, that might make you more susceptible or protect you against infection. And that's something that people have been studying for a long time. There's people who die from like the flu, really young kids who have some either genetic mutations or variants in their family that makes them highly susceptible to having severe manifestation of the infection. So, there will be studies that sort of determine that, because I know people are definitely looking at that now. It's like, why do some, very young 35-year-old, 40-year-old, some people who aren't even really obese or outwardly have any severe disease that go along with them, once they get coronavirus, they end up either getting severely ill and intubated, or some of them die. It's like, what was so special about them that they end up getting it so severely? I mean, the only problem is that there's not that many of these people, just like a lot of other diseases, there's just not that many of these people who have genetic reasons for them to get a very severe case of it.
Yeah.
So we may not be able to have the numbers to do any meaningful genetic studies, but they'll try. I guarantee you they will try.
So are you saying that one way we could explain why some people who have no sort of serious risk factor, whether it's age or some underlying condition, we could explain it because of there's some sort of genetic aspect that makes the SARS-CoV-2 virus bind with those receptors on their lungs more easily or more readily? Is kind of like a genetic
so
thing?
it could be as simple as that. It may not be, because it may affect the ability of that ACE2 enzyme to be able to do its function, which is converting angiotensin to the second form. But I think there's other factors that determine whether or not somebody has a severe manifestation. So your immune system, there's a lot of determinants, genetic determinants of how your immune system responds. Some people are Ig deficient of a particular type. They might be missing some antibodies. So some people have very low counts of antibodies by just genetic predisposition. So that will affect your ability to be able to respond to a viral infection. Some people make very low amounts of interferons, or make very high amounts of interferons. So interferons are these like hormones that your body releases when they're infected with certain viruses or certain infectious agents. They release these classes of molecules called interferons, and that kind of stimulates an immune response. Some people may not release enough of it, so they may not get a good enough immune response early, or they might be hypersensitive to this type of viral infection. They might release a ton of inflammatory molecules, interferons being one of them, and that might cause their body to have the acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is where their body sort of overreacts and their lungs end up being filled with inflammatory fluid, and then they can't breathe. So that could be genetically determined outside of, coronavirus. It could have been another virus that got into the lungs that could have done that to them, Who knows? But that's where there's many points of variation. That's why you'd have to do a genome-wide look, which is why it'd be hard to find it.
Jeez, man.
Even on top of that, I mean, you're absolutely right, Ehi. Another issue that you just made me realize that I've had conversations at the CDC about is the surveillance that they're doing on people who have been identified as having either antibodies or a positive coronavirus test. The demographic information is incredibly sparse. They don't have, I mean, they're essentially just not collecting it for the most part.
Yeah, some states weren't sending it in.
Yeah, exactly. It all almost always goes back to data cleaning and data sharing agreements. And even for example, for Georgia alone, 50% of the cases, the ethnicity is unknown. The race and ethnicity is unknown. Of the, 16,000, it's more than that, in 22,000. I don't know what the numbers are now. But I do have updated, April 21st numbers of like ages and fucking, races, sex, shit like that. But even
what are the races? Sparse. Yeah. So like, what are the distributions? And
sure.
The ones you don't.
So here in Georgia, I only have Georgia pulled up for now. I would have to kind of dig through to get every state, but this is the one that was most pertinent to me, so I'll talk about. Yeah. So Georgia has 5,121 cases in African Americans. That's non-Hispanic African Americans. And you could probably tack on 100 more who have put Afro-Latino. So they've checked that Hispanic box. And then there are only 3,600 white. And this information is actually readily available for anybody else who wants to look at it. It's a daily status report. I'll make sure to link it to you guys so you can see. But at the bottom of this, there are 8,000 something cases that are just unknown. And when we're doing any kind of data analysis, any kind of modeling, you got that many unknowns, your data is damn near useless. You can't run any kind of, realistic analysis. I've been on a few studies and papers already where we've tried to extrapolate and figure some shit out. But, people are not writing down, pertinent information. And I've seen some doctors write down some wild shit in their narratives. We're at a loss. So
no, they have the data. They have the data. They just didn't put it in there. It's because they.
But if we don't have it, then it means nothing. They can have it all they want, but if it never makes it to a place where
the hospitals have that data.
Yeah.
Because you have to fill in a race whenever you sign up as a patient, unless they've never been to a doctor before and they just
and I get
showed
that
up emergently.
Also because of. But because of our healthcare system, again, a lot of this is tracked by not just discharge data in hospitals, but like the payer data. That's where we're getting this data because the hospitals are billing insurance companies and things. So like the specific ass shit that they've written down is incredibly pertinent to the insurance companies. They damn sure have people trying to identify models of where they can save a buck because particular groups might have higher risk factors, or, oh, you're a smoker, so you might be at risk. You're definitely going to be paying higher premiums. The insurance companies want to see all that shit, whether you're insured or not. They're trying to get as much information as they can. And the public sector, I guess I would say, or the research sector is just trying to play catch up. And we're fighting with, the insurance companies and everybody else to get our hands on the information. We're fighting over information. Back to that whole
Herschel.
war of misinformation. What's up?
I got a question for you since you work at the CDC. Now, I'm not trying to malign you guys, but it seems like the media recently has been trying to really put a real sourpuss perspective of what's going on at the CDC in terms of you guys coming up with the coronavirus test, the initial one, and then they were saying that there was some contamination, which I completely understand how it happened because I've been there. I've seen this type of thing happen, so I know how it could happen. But I'm just like, yo, what do you think about it? And what are the other people there at your place of work? If anybody's ever has mentioned anything, like, what are they talking about?
I mean, we're keeping it like because the majority of people are scientists and they understand. I don't want to say that mistakes get made. Like, that's not a good way to describe this, but people are relatively level-headed about how we are approaching this virus, the unknowns, the unknown unknowns that are going to come up as we try to do more research. Because, I mean, science is about it. We're practicing. It's a practice of science, just like people practice medicine, and shit happens sometimes. We don't know everything until we learn more about, blase blah topic. We got to figure it out. So in the interest of identifying the right answers, people have made some mistakes and have admitted to being wrong. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, but you know how the scapegoater in general, Donald Trump, is going to turn on those niggas, man. He's going to turn on them so hard.
Of course.
He's going to be like, oh, and I heard in the New York Times they were talking about the CDC. We'll be looking into that.
Yeah.
And he's just going to fire like whoever is in charge, like arbitrarily.
We're trying not to take it personal and shit like that. But I was just mentioning before how the shit starts to get political. And like those figureheads, the people who are supposed to know their shit, but they have to get in front of a camera, and then the media can put a face on the shit, like Dr. Fauci, who is doing a great job, obviously, but like let some shit go left or be different from what he's predicted, and they'll jump down his throat too. Like, even though he didn't know, we're still learning. He always has disclaimers, like a lot of doctors who have been getting on TV do, and some who don't. Like, we are only as good at, just like in any model you build, it's only as good as the information that you have at the time. It's only as good as whoever created the model, however smart they were, they thought of all these different particular caveats and shit like that. This is something that we don't fully understand. So when some shit happens, I hate to say it, but shit happens. That's kind of how we got into this situation in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Tunde, what do you have to say about your boy, Dr. Phil? Talking about
I don't know. This nigga is not an actual doctor. He does not practice medicine.
He's a psychologist, man. This dude is a psychologist, man.
Yeah, that's your boy. Tunde.
I know. That's why I said Tunde, man. You must feel so bad. It's like we're associated with this dude.
Yeah,
but I mean, but then again, Dr. Oz said some stupid shit too, which also makes every doctor.
That's your boy, Ehi. Nobody in CDC is saying shit.
Nobody's safe. Nobody's safe, man. Everybody gonna look like an idiot out here.
Well, what did Dr. Phil say? I saw an article, but I forgot, and I recognized at the time that he was like kind of talking some crazy shit.
I can't even remember. He said something stupid though. Dr. Oz said that, like, we have to weigh whether or not adding 2 to 3% to the death rate is enough for us to stay at home. I was like, why did you say that?
I'm on Forbes.com.
Dr. Phil.
He claimed, I'm on Forbes.com and I'm reading a quote. He claimed that we probably shouldn't have even started with this, presumably social distancing measures like closing workplaces, schools, and encouraging people. He said they're saying he didn't offer an alternative. I don't know. This article is not providing a quote, but apparently he seems to have some dissenting opinions. I mean, with regard to how I feel about Dr. Phil, man, I think that, there inherently is not really a good alignment between science and pop culture, science and media, Like if you read a lot of these articles, about the coronavirus or just science in general, it's always like this scientist said this, this research says this, and I'm like, this is not how you write about science. When you write about science, you have to provide some kind of point, a topic. You describe all of the information that was brought forth before your point, and then you defend your point. Like, you can't just say, oh, well, this scientist said this. Like, if you read these articles, it's so unscientific. Like, I know y'all niggas read articles.
Yeah. Here's what he said. Let me read what he said. He was on Laura Ingraham show, which is one of the most hilarious shows
on
TV
Fox
right now on Fox News. Yeah, Laura Ingraham, the most ridiculous racist, like, dog whistle shit you'll ever hear. She says on a nightly basis. So, if you ever want to get that kind of laugh, it's out there. But anyway, Dr. Phil was on there, and he was saying that 45,000 people a year die from automobile accidents, 480,000 from cigarettes, 360,000 in swimming pools. And he said, but we don't shut the country down for that, but yet we're doing it for this. It's like, that's a good point, but the risk is different, man. If you don't want to die from cigarettes, you don't smoke them. If you don't want to die in automobile accident, you don't get in them. You know, if you don't
Yeah.
swim, you don't go in a pool. But if you like, you're gonna live your life in a hole. Like that's how you're gonna avoid coronavirus because it's out there. And so you have no way of abating this risk, which is
Yeah.
fucking stupid for him to say that. But I mean, I don't know what his point was. I didn't listen to the whole thing.
Nah, I mean, I'll just say, man, you know, first of all, I was surprised because I don't watch the Dr. Phil show. I don't really know shit about him, but to my understanding, he's always been like a pretty straight up, level headed kind of guy. So that's a quick detour, man. A pretty strong detour from what I thought he was before. But honestly, man, in the world of identity politics and Trump being the president, I think he's turning a lot of people, man. Like we're starting to see a lot of people's real sides, man. Because some people who were just all cool before Trump, and I'm not trying to disparage anyone who supports him because, you know what, I'm not even gonna go there. but I do think it says a lot if someone is like outwardly supporting him, and I guess Dr. Phil isn't supporting him, but the narrative is
But
very
his Oprah's
true.
friend, she cut his balls off if he ever talked about he's supporting Trump.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. But I mean, I'll just say, man, while I do appreciate the science knowledge that's being disseminated pretty much on a daily basis now, I don't think people still recognize like what it's like, you know, like what you were saying, Ehi, about how you see this shit all the time where there's like noise in the data, and when people are trying to build these testing units, you know, it's not going to be perfect right away. It's like, you know, people think that because you're smart, you know, you got a PhD or whatever.
Yeah, you know
that
about
you
this
know
shit. That's
exactly
not true.
what needs to be done. Like it's a process of trial and error and testing. You know, testing, hypothesis testing. No one is ever, even now, when you do a test, there's still a possibility of it being incorrect because that's just how science works. We're not going to be able to capture the exact information that we want every single time we run a test. And this rings so far and wide in psychology, because in psychology, when you measure a psychological construct, the basic theory of psychological measurement, one of the basic theories, is called classical theory. I think classical theory of measurement or some shit like that. It suggests that you're never going to capture the true trait that you want because psychology is, you know, one of the soft sciences. It's a social science. We can't capture it because, first of all, we share it all together inherently. And it's not a physical science. But even in the physical sciences, you're not going to be able to measure things perfectly every time. And I don't think people know that.
Heisenberg, everybody, yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. People don't know that.
But the thing is that when Fauci goes on TV and he's spewing the bullshit, well, sorry, I should take that back. He's not spewing bullshit. Trump is spewing the bullshit. Fauci's trying to somehow mitigate the bullshit. But the thing is that the nation has completely lost faith in Trump, so they're not listening to him. So when you got people like Fauci coming on, and he's not coming on in a media sort of aspect, he's coming on as the director of the allergies and infectious diseases unit of the NIH. People expect him to be exactly right, but that's not how it works. That is not how it works. That's not how it has ever worked in science. Fortunately, we've gotten to a point where we can kind of approximate things really closely, specifically in the physical sciences.
Very quickly. You know, like, I thought it was amazing how fast we were able to get on this. I mean, like, you know, it came out in China like in November. By the end of December, January, they had the sequence, like a fucking sequence of the virus. So that jumpstart. I mean, it's crazy how fast we have like gotten this together. It didn't take too long. I mean, you know, it could have been quicker.
Relatively, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just in terms of like where we've gotten to in terms of technology and the spreading of information, how everybody knows about this, and you know, people know generally what to do, even if they don't do it. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's directly related to money. You give the scientists money, they will do things efficiently and nicely and quickly.
Speaking of which, that's a great point. So So I don't know if this is the reason. So like I said before, the CDC had their problems with making that initial test. It's kind of sad because the CDC doesn't have that capacity. Inherently, they're not a test making group. They're not the FDA. They don't have experience in approving those things. That's not what they do. And this is by design. So there's laws preventing the CDC from producing any sort of commercial device or any something that could be used commercially that competes with a product that is made by a private company. So they actually don't have anyone who makes tests in general. They don't have those people because that would compete with a test that would be sold by, LabCorp, Abbott, anybody else. So they're not even able to do that. So when they have these issues, I'm not surprised because it's almost by design. But nobody talks about that. Only reason why I know is because I worked in laboratory medicine. I did it like a month rotation, and they're doing these tests to determine bacterial antibody susceptibilities. So there's this particular test, you have to grow it on these plates, and then it has like the zone of restriction. Doesn't matter. The thing about it though is that they're still grading those by hand. Like they take a picture of it and they get on the computer, they measure the circles manually. Now you can write like an image recognition program to just automatically do that, right? The CDC could hire some like computer scientist and a summer student to do that shit in a few months. Like
This shit probably easy as fuck for them too.
Yeah, because it's the same. It's very simple in theory. Maybe there's some quality control you have to do, blah blah blah. But they can't actually make that because the only people who use that test are people who are, academic labs that want to be able to give data to the CDC to be able to monitor these, the antibiotic resistance rates out there. So these other companies want to be able to sell them their rapidly read, like much worse in terms of specificity and sensitivity, but for the antibody susceptibilities, they're much worse at doing that. But they want to be able to sell you their test anyway because it's quick and easy, and you can just run 1 million at a time, even though they're not as good in the quantitative sense.
Wait, so the CDC is banned from mass producing something that a corporation is already producing?
Yeah, producing any sort of commercial device or commercial thing that would compete with another company. It's kind of like how they can't study tobacco. I mean, not tobacco, but guns.
Well, wait, but why couldn't the CDC just build their own image recognition model and just use that in house? They don't have to send it out to to.
Well, yeah, they might do that, but they can't get it to everywhere else because they're not made to. It's like it may be an in-house thing, so they might be used to making these like serology tests in-house, but they're not used to making them at scale. Like that's the same thing where you want to be able to make a product, you have to be able to make sure it's reproducible throughout. When you get to that point that you're doing that kind of testing, you can't as the CDC. So I'm sure they have their own internal shit going on, but they definitely don't have a systematic way of distributing these systems.
Yeah. You know what? That is a great point. And personally, I've had my fill of the biomedical sciences, but I do want to bring up one more thing, fellas. Going back to the politics conversation, but Axios, in fact, actually published an article about how supposedly China covered up the coronavirus situation. They published this article in March 18th. And today, April 22nd, is when the United States government now supports this idea that China covered it up. Anyway, I bring this up to say, man, I'm a huge fan of the United States. I am indeed a citizen of the United States. But I think we're going to have to reckon with how much government we don't have, how restricted the government is, how much red tape. I mean, what you said just now, Ahi, is like completely ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't you want to disseminate tools and software that can improve our health if the CDC is going to do it much better?
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact policy, but I'm sure on some level, the reason why we were so slow for the response is because we probably had to do a bunch of like policy work to roll things back, to roll back, or to maybe create more restrictions because we couldn't have just anybody out here just doing tests, you know.
So here's the reason why. I mean, in a simple sense, I mean, the difference between a company and a country's government is essentially that the buck stops at someone who knows shit, because that's their job. Like they have to be able to know something. So, you know, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson isn't the guy who's deciding like which of their, you know, 80 different antibody test kits that Johnson & Johnson is going to put out in the market, right? It's the guy who's in charge of that department who knows that shit. You know, he knows what the positives and negatives of each one are. In the government, you know, the person who's deciding what comes out is Trump, or somebody like Trump who doesn't know. He's a politician. He decides what happens, you know? And that's why Fauci's there. He's like, yeah, I'm just here to give information. I don't make the decisions. I'm just here to give the public health aspect. Every time they ask him all these questions on the stage, it's because he's, you know, that's the difference, is that the CEO of Johnson & Johnson will listen to the guy who knows shit, because at the end of the day, like, if we're going to put out a test, it has to be one of these. He can't just be picking randomly. Like, I heard hydroxychloroquine is going to work. You know, I read it in a paper somewhere. It's like, he's not going to say that. He's going to ask the guy who did the tests on the drug. But that's not how it works in government.
Yeah. And, you know, this has been the running theme of the podcast, but our nation is coming back to science. Word to the John F. Kennedy era, you know, when it appeared that science was highly valued and we went to the moon. But
yeah, man.
At the same time, it exposes a lot of issues with our government, issues with the fact that ideology can reign supreme. In certain parts of the country, in certain situations, in certain groups, ideology reigns above objective fact. We see that with Trump's ideology kind of going hammer pretty much for the past couple years. But hey, man, we'll see how things sort of pan out. But I can tell you this, man, the boys at RTBTH are gonna keep reading papers and talking shit.
Yep. Doing science and talking shit. That's what we do. I'm all out of science right now, so I'm talking that shit.
Most definitely.
I'm trying to get to the business side so I can talk about
that money
talk.
That paper. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hey man, if you ain't done it yet, go back and check out the Unpopular Opinions Science Edition, released by RTBTH. I guess probably about a year ago now, and we got some hot takes for you there. We got hot takes for you everywhere. Anyway, this is
hot
RTBTH.
takes on China for you there. We already knew what time it was months ago. We predicted this.
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
we did have some hot takes about. And you know, even
you should insert that shit. Insert some of those clips, man.
I could. Yeah, I probably actually will do that at the end of this one. Anyway, this is RTBTH. Today we had the instigator, but he was actually the investigator today. Thank you, Ahi, man. You dropped some knowledge. Don't act like RTBTH didn't ever teach you nothing on the podcast. God damn it. Herschel, man, what are the closing remarks?
Yo, this was fun. I definitely learned some shit. I hope y'all learned some shit.
Yeah, I did.
Keep it posted.
Keep it posted. Peace.
Guess what, bitch?